it's important as you study any religion to really have a moment to study the basic dimensions of religion. And I want to go over this fairly quickly. It should be fairly obvious, and in your notes you should have them, and so that should make it easier for us to work on. To try and understand the fundamentals of any religion is to work on the issues and concerns of all humanity. And religion has that wonderful capacity of working on them. And that's the beauty of religion. And a question that I was prompting you to work on is, who are you? Is there a way you identify yourself? And each of you had that opportunity of identifying yourself. And that's what religion can do. It can give you an identity. Now, football can give you a great identity too. We got any good football? Anybody enjoys football in the room? And so Scott, who's your favorite team?
Vikings, I can probably say for a change.
Is that right? Okay, and proudly. So listen to that voice of his. Just truly enjoys the team of the Vikings. So humanity likes to create identities, and religion is one of those quick off the tongue for many people as to their identities. When you live in Bountiful, everyone's going to tell you what their identity is. And you quickly know that's not you, which is hopefully at some levels helpful. But so it helps us to know who we're not as well as who we are. So identity is important. What sense is there in life? Because we're all searching for that fulfillment in life. And religion is one of those wonderful pathways of fulfillment. It is just a joy to watch people's lives and your life move as a result of the fulfillment that religion offers us. It asks that question, does life have meaning? And it can answer all of them. A good religion will answer that question of existence in a wonderful way. And those questions that are so hard for science or philosophy, religion, it can handle it. And that's the beauty of working in the field of religion, is it has those opportunities of answering questions that so many other fields of study can't. And some of those tough questions, is it just living and dying? The intriguing part is many religions define where we're coming from and where we're going. And some religions don't want to talk about it. Buddhism doesn't want to talk about it. Just don't go there. Hinduism will, but in a different way. The religions of the book, and we'll talk about these categories I'm using in a minute, the religions of the book love to do this conversation. We're here and we're going here. And so that sort of definition of the historical timeline is a wonderful characteristic of the religions of the book. Buddhism is that wonderful religion that says, stop, today is most important. We're focused on today. And they define where they're coming from and where they're going by not worrying about it. So it's still sort of there, even in a backwards kind of way. Hinduism will deal with its historical past and future, and again, a little more unique way, and I'll bring that out in a second. But there's just a reality. Today, I started my day, and I end my day. My week started, my week ended. The month started, the month ends. The year, life begins, life ends. There's a historical way that we can look at life if we choose. And that becomes questions. Is it more than that? And religion can deal with that. Religion, really, my best definition of religion is it gives me a pair of glasses. And I purposely put those pair of glasses on to be able to look at what is ultimately real. I can look at a lot of reality. I can see the clock, I can see the technology, I can see my hand, but the question isn't what is real, but the question is what is ultimately real. And so when you engage in a religion, you want to make sure you're looking at that question. What does the glasses you're prepared to put on, what do they allow you to see? that you can't see if you're not wearing the pair of glasses, or at least it's clearer. And so that metaphor of the glasses I like as far as what a religion is. It's a pair of glasses that allow you to see something. But that's just the awareness side of the equation. The focal point of what you're looking at is that which is very difficult to see. And so the glasses you put on are to see things that in a 9-to-5 existence you just don't see. Now we call those things that we really can't see well the sacred. It's just that which is not the secular, that which is not the physical, that which is not the body. Those things are the sacred. That which is different and what you can purposely look at. We want to discover. Now the place we look is different in almost all the religions. Wherever you might look for the sacred, that shifts, but you're looking for something sacred, and that word sacred deserves a bit of development on your behalf. That which is classically not seen easily is the sacred, as opposed to that which you see easily, which is the not sacred. And you can use a lot of terms to define that. The sacred, okay? Great book, if you ever get a chance. The Sacred Canopy. It's by Peter Berger. And it's just how do you look at this religious stuff in a way that's meaningful? And Peter Berger does a marvelous job of defining the canopy that we construct around us when it's religion, when it's religious, and how we do that. What is the sacred? What is the secular? He defines those terms nicely as well. Because wherever we look, we're wanting to find vitality, value, and meaning. That's what we want to find. And our spirituality are those nuggets that we glean, that sense that we've accomplished something of value, that our lives are more meaningful and more energetic, vitality, and our intellectual processes are stimulated, and we understand things better, meaning. So the sacred is where we can go to energize all of those elements of our life. So they're very, very important to us. And so those glasses are become very, very meaningful. What are you seeing when someone assumes a yoga posture? What are you seeing? Peace. Peace.
I'm seeing their physical body.
Okay? You're seeing a physicality. A person is in a particular position. What are you seeing? At any layer of that question could be answered.
Unaggression.
Okay.
The lack of aggression.
Yeah. It's pretty hard to hurt somebody when you're in a yoga posture. You have to work really hard at that, right?
I work really hard at it, yeah.
So peace, nonviolence, now becomes an element of peace. What are you seeing when you see someone in a yoga posture?
Someone's like journey towards enlightenment.
Yeah. It's a pathway to something very important. Very, very important. They're on a pathway. What else do you see? How's that metaphor of glasses ringing for you? We've got 5 of us have glasses on. They're just physical elements that, do their job in front of and sit on our noses. But does the metaphor work for you? Okay.
It's different perspectives, different ways to see the same thing, essentially, with life, I guess.
I've had lots of students say, how can you teach all these different religions? So now, what's my answer?
Different lenses.
Yeah, when I'm teaching a different religion, I just put on a different pair of lenses. And then I try and see the world through that pair of lenses. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm gonna reverse it.
Please.
It's just odd. I mean, the lenses are very, very important. But for me, sometimes if I'm doing a piece of artwork and I'm so focused on such tight detail in a photograph, I have to take my glasses off in order to see a larger picture so that I don't get so focused on a freckle or a flea. And so that's the reverse of what I do sometimes, is to say I'm so focused on one thing. In other words, I might be so focused on a particular denomination that I can't see the bigger picture, and I have to, in essence, reverse that and take my glasses off in order to kind of fog things out a little bit so that I can see things, so I don't focus so much on the freckle or the flea.
And a boatload of us in religious communities have seen folks focus on the minutiae.
Minutia.
And it drives us out of the religions of folks that are that intense. So your point is well taken. What meaning are they discovering? What meaning are they discovering in that yoga posture? What meaning are they discovering? So it isn't just physical, you're seeing something. Something else is going on.
Well, I like from the last Thursday, yoga is about unity. So in one sense, it may be that everybody in the room is doing that same posture, and so they're all tuning themselves together. But they may also be tuning themselves to everybody else who's doing that posture, regardless of where they may be, and perhaps even in time. It may just be in that posture. And once they get in there, if they tune into that, then there's more out of it. That becomes the spiritual, or what you were saying, the sacred, the non-physical thing that's happening. That I think is ultimately, hopefully, what people are getting out of it at some point.
Good start. Join in on that. What's the meaning you're seeing when you see someone in a yoga posture?
I mean, you're just like kind of working on your own self, I feel like. I mean, I think back to before yoga was like a spiritual thing for me, back when I just was doing it for exercise. And it's like, even though I didn't really know it, I was developing myself and spending time with myself, reflecting on myself, I guess. So I feel like it's really hard to draw a meaning for everyone, though. Other than just reflecting. And like you said, the unity thing, but like that definitely wasn't where I started with yoga,
As with so many things, you often are physical to become spiritual. You teach your kids how to hold their hands if you want to teach them to pray. And at some point, you hope they do a whole lot more than just hold their hands in the same way. You hope it has far more meaning than that. But you often begin with the physical. I just need some exercise to arrive at where Virginia was. I need a pathway to enlightenment. And that meaning of, that if you were to delve down, why do we need a pathway to enlightenment? And how does that posture open us into interpreting that in a person? Why do we need a pathway to enlightenment?
Purpose?
Purpose. Okay.
Hierarchy of needs?
Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for any of you that remember your Psych 101. We do have to work up the ladder. Any others?
The word focus is really it's meaningful. If you don't have a sense of focus, I'm just thinking of my art class today, and I had two boys that are normally incredible artists, and they completely messed with each other so bad today that they didn't accomplish anything. And they completely lost their focus. Last week, one of the same boys sat in a group of chaotic 12 to 14 kids that came rushing in. He completely focused in on the work and created something incredibly great. This week, he got into it with another boy, and they both completely lost their focus and didn't make anything out of it. So it wasn't so much that the class had this atmosphere of focus, but it was a choice by the boy, one of the boys, to take that moment and to actually, regardless of what was going on, zoom in and just, I mean, it was just flying around the room and to be able to focus down like that. And what we can accomplish when we do focus. That was a serious journey as far as to figure out what's going on in the brain of this 8-year-old, you know, but without the focus, nothing is going on, nothing productive.
I'm going to throw a word that Virginia has already thrown into our midst that may cause you to be a little uncomfortable as to when we see someone in the yoga posture. And the word is perfection. Virginia, when you were reading that, what did you think when you said that word? Perfection.
Perfection?
Did you pause for a minute before you even said that aloud? That's a possible term that we could ever use?
I mean, I think everyone's perfect, just the way they are.
Okay, so you've given us a definition now. Okay. Just the way they
Or
are.
else they wouldn't be, I mean, there's no such thing as perfect, so therefore everything is already perfect.
Okay, there's the classic general understanding of the term, that every ancient, Aristotle, Buddha, Jesus, all assumed you could be. And so, just know that they did have a concept of perfection that I don't think we have in our culture. We have a psychological concept. We've defeated that word. We've pounded that word into the ground so that nobody can accomplish it. But I would argue that the word really means something to the ancient religious scholars, ancient religious individuals and their communities. And so I think we need to spend some time on that word, because it really is a meaningful word to all of the religious communities. And it's a doable word. That's the challenge of the word. And so when you're reading the ancient literature, the beauty of it is it really rattles you sometimes, because your culture isn't their culture. Your meaning that you put into a word isn't their meaning that they put into a word. And though the words are seemingly the same, they really are different. And so I'll just, if you'd like to put a word on your paper, put the word perfection is doable. Is a classic ancient religious concept. Whatever that word means, it's doable. Our challenge is perfection in our culture means God, and I'm not God. I assure you, I understand that equation. I am not. God is perfection. I am not, therefore I cannot be perfect. But that's not what the ancients thought. We'll get into that again. And I was so fascinated that you used the word tonight. And it's really what that yoga posture can mean is perfection. I'll just put a tough one out there with you. And I appreciate Virginia's definition. I think that's the best definition you could come up with in our culture. I really do. Now we'll sort of just grow that by exposing ourselves to the ancients. Okay. So what you saw in the survey is that there's 4 dimensions that I like to work with whenever I'm working with religion. I like to work with the human involvement with the realm of the sacred. How does a human engage with the sacred? How is that even possible? How can you, a physical being, engage with something that is classically non-physical? How is that even doable? How do you think about it? How do you relate to it? How do you work with it at all? But that's the point of religion, is to give humanity a chance to involve themselves with the sacred. And so that's a fascinating concept that religion gives us a bridge to. The second are, how do we practice things? How do we express things? How do we act out our practices? How do we get into a group and as a group act out our practices? Those are all wonderfully religious. Those are wonderfully religious. So you want to watch how the religion does that. How does it create thought? How does it write its books? How does it live its life? How does it get together with a community and bond as a community? Those are the second dimensions that you want to look at whenever you're dealing with a religion. The third is you want to watch the symbolic world. The symbolic world. And so when I say something like, who invented that? That's a symbol. Who invented that? It was a religion. Oh, no, it may have been pre-religious. Anyway, who gave us our number system?
The Hindus.
No? No? Muslims.
No,
It's
no,
Arabic.
the Muslims-
Arabic
actually,
numerals.
Yeah, I know. Actually,
Arabic numerals.
Actually, the Muslims
it-
got it from the Hindus.
Did they?
Yes, they did. Yeah, yeah. A lot of people think it's the Muslims and they're called Arabic numbers, but they got it from the Hindus.
I'll live with that critique. That's even better for tonight. I thought I only had one symbol in the room at the front, so I had to live with my own knowledge. When do you think that? Love any details you have on that. Yeah.
I
That's you.
haven't researched it, but
I had
that
not
came
heard that.
through a few years back when I read something on
So
that.
we're all trained to say those are Arabic numerals, right?
Mhm.
Which means they come from the Arabic culture.
Or
Right.
we're
Yes,
traders, so they
yes.
spread it out.
And they spread it out.
Yeah.
But I certainly
Saudi
wouldn't
Arabia.
doubt what you've just placed on the table. But I wanted to sort of say that's a symbol, folks, right? Whatever that is a symbol. It's the only one I've got on the board right now. And then we have this conversation, where to come from, how to get here, I'm not Arabic, I'm not Hindu, why do I use this dang thing? And you can have this wonderful conversation on symbolic language that we use within. But a religion is a total system of symbols. We will communicate those symbols together. And the fourth way that we'll look at it is transformation. And that goes back to the Enlightenment conversation. A path of ultimate transformation. Every religion will give you a pathway. And that pathway you want to see. So when you're studying a religion, like Hinduism, you're going to see us going through this. You're going to see how the humans are involved and how they engage in it. You're going to see how they express it. You're going to see how they symbolically develop it. And then you'll see their pathways that they use to create perfection. I'll use that word again just because I've already started it. But it's that transformation. And when you say ultimate transformation, boy, are you touching on perfection. And it's a tough word. But I want to mess with it because it really sort of rattles our brains, and I like to do that. So what have we missed? If we're studying a religion, is there anything you can think of that these four categories don't, that something isn't in one of these four categories? Anything I'm missing with those four? Scholars break things down just so that we can figure them out, so we can teach. We have to teach something. So we break things down into parts. And this is how religious scholars break down religion. They break it into four sections. Anything you're sensing we're missing here?
Would the second part be where
there's rules, and whether it's Catholicism or Christianity, 10 Commandments, and is that?
I think that would be fair. How do we, what are the books we write? And what are the rules that define our actions? I think
That being on your path of ultimate transformation would be the way to get there.
and I think that's a good point. These are interlinked. We break them apart simply to be students, but at some point you've got to put them back together again. Yes, when you have a book of rules, it's meant to be a pathway of transformation. Yes. So that kind of interlinkage is very much a part of something you have to re-achieve as you're studying a religion. You have to be able to do that.
The idea of transformation gets lost a lot of times in the rules as the end result. It often is just becomes the mantra of rules.
Every method is a trap. When you
Yeah.
get far enough in it, the method falls away, and then you
forget
get
where
the
you're
enlightenment,
going,
but the
man.
method has to fall away at
Yeah.
the end.
Yeah,
So every method that you get trapped in. Sure.
yeah. You have to be able to cut yourself loose from it in a way.
Thank you. Okay, quickly, I've been using some terms on how I define religions, and I'll just give you my definitions that we use for the families of religions. I include in the ancient religions the indigenous, the shamanism, spiritualism, animism. What this classically is a naturalist worldview. We've already used that term. We used it last week. That we find many in McCall are naturalists. They see the world around them. They enjoy the natural elements, and they focus on those. There's an emphasis on magic. There's a concept of taboo and evil. They are often they connect the political and spiritual authority, so that your shaman is very high up within a tribe. So they have political authority, but they also have spiritual authority. And you have and your rituals tend to focus on food and seasons. So we call those the ancient religions. We have the religions of the book, which is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They're highly dualistic, and so they're the ones that have the timeline. They're going to start in the past, they're going to go to the future. And today is the earth. And so you have the dualism of heaven and earth, body and soul. You have just extraordinary numbers of dualisms that are usually built into the religions of the book. They tend to be monotheistic. One God is the focus, and that God is in charge of everything. So there tends to be a sense of God overview within the religions of the book. They all three of them have a revelation of God through the prophets. Some of them then carry that further, in that sense, but they all have revelation from God through the prophets. And so they have their idiosyncrasies in that area, in all areas actually. As we've talked about, they're historical, which means they're linear in perspective. America is linear in its perspective. The vast majority assume we're on a pathway to heaven. Why? Because we have been enculturated with religions of the book. And therefore we think on a linear time frame. It's important to realize this cultural attribute to you. You have been brought up in a linear environment so that you think like there is a distinct past and a distinct future, and you are on the linear pathway from the past to the future. That is a gift of you to you from the religions of the book and the societies that they have constructed. And America has been dominated by both Christianity and Judaism. And so both of those have informed that way that we tend to think together. And that is just one of the things you need to be aware of, because what you have to break the minute you come to Hinduism is that point. You have to think differently than a person enculturated with a linear perspective. So it's important to realize that this society is that way. Life, it has one passing, make the best of it, is a very important social attribute that, again, we're going to have to break if we're going to have to understand Hinduism. We're going to change that. But before we do that, we have to understand it. We teach our children that they can be president. That comes from the religious understanding that life has one passing, make the best of it. Therefore, you're going to start as a youngster, you're going to study hard, you're going to work hard all the way through your career, you're going to climb the ladder as high as you can, and you can be president. That's a context that you're given that comes from a religious past and a religious heritage. And it's something that we're going to have to realize, otherwise we cannot understand Hinduism. Okay? Is that one sort of starting to settle in? What your Christian and Jewish social roots have given you in the lenses that you see your world and the way you talk. And this is a we are going to heaven kind of society. And we have one shot to do it. So get her done. Does that all make sense for us, for everybody? Okay? You're getting that from the religions of the book. Does that make sense?
Predominantly, but are you saying 100%?
Oh no, I never, no. We can pull off of any of my statements. So I overemphasize and then I'm happy to pull back. Because this is a mixture of all peoples, and we get all thought here. We have Native American that don't think like this. We have lots of impulses into this. But for so many of us, this is a dominating social context.
You've
Okay?
grown up in public school for the last 50 years, that's what it is. So.
You got one shot at it. Do your best. Do your best. Do your best. Okay? It comes from this as a foundational underpinning. Okay? And so our religions from East Asia, Shinto, Taoism, and Confucianism, here we're seeing an emphasis on harmony with the divine flow of nature. And the yin and yang is such a wonderful symbol, and it's really meant to be fluid. So that as the white is pushing, the black is pushing. There's harmony between these forces. And even in the middle of the white, there's black. Even in the middle of the black, there's white. So that you can't escape the reality of what is opposite to you. And so the easiest way to understand that is male and female. An obvious part of humanity. And male and female must work together for life in the natural context. And so your Asian religions are working on that natural flow. And when male and female are in good context and in harmony, then the family is in harmony. And when the families of the neighborhoods are in harmony, now the city is in harmony. And when all the cities are in harmony, then the nation is in harmony. And so your Eastern religions are all working on that dynamic of the push and pull, of the warm and the cold. And the necessity of those things working together so that there is harmony with divine flow. There's reverence for that which has gone before, and so the past is so important because they have learned that informs the present. How you treat the past informs the present, and that's their social safety net. From a sociology point of view, the social safety net is the ancestors needing the young people to take care of them. And so if there's not reverence of the old, then the whole society falls apart because that's the social safety net. So ancestor worship has a very practical extension in these religions, but it's built on a religious or a philosophical grounding to say we need to make sure the young people take care of the old people. Otherwise it all falls apart. And again, young and old, another yin and yang. So the human existence is positive and good. What I didn't say in the religions of the book is that there is a very strong culture within religions of the book that human existence is evil and terrible and negative. Very strong impulses. You can say that Calvinism is built on that concept of people are evil and must be made good. Life is tough and bad. Was one of the difficult dilemmas of Calvinism is trying to drive that home. And Calvinism is very much a foundation of Americanism. And so our culture, again, has that sense of all people are evil and must become good. All people are negative, therefore we must make them positive. So that the pathway of transformation within the religions of the book is to get people from evil and negative to positive and good, and that pathway is the religious journey that they carry you on. And so another sense that to understand America is to understand that evil and negative. Now that's not the way it is in the last 50 years. That's transformed. But America for the first 250 years was very much people are evil and negative and we got to change them. And so that perception comes from the people of the book. But the point here is in Asian religions there's this assumption that it's positive and good at the get-go, at the start of life. And then it warps and it gets weird. But it starts as positive and good. There's a unifying cultural role to the religious journey. That brings us now to the religions of India. Our Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism. They prefer Sikhism, but that is weird to the American ear if we say Sikhism. But just to be accurate. They have a monotheistic worldview, which means one unified reality. So it isn't a dualistic, it's unified. And so that they're always looking for that unity. Whatever they're doing is looking for that unity. And that unity is very important to them. And so their lens, their glasses aren't looking out, they are looking in. And so the religions of India have an inner soul of reality, and that's your sacred ultimate. So as opposed to sacred ultimate being exteriorized, religions of India, it's interiorized. And so what yoga is meant to do is to drive the inner soul of reality towards the sacred ultimate. Do you get that? What yoga is defined to do is to focus on the inner soul of reality, to find that sacred ultimate. Now that's a lot of jargon, folks. Are you ready for me to keep going? Okay, we're going to be working on that the whole time. But that's the point of yoga. Okay? To find the inner soul of reality in the sacred ultimate. But 99% of Americans have used it because it's great physical experience. Okay? They're not trying to find the inner soul of reality to seek that sacred ultimate. They're not doing that. They didn't know they could. They just didn't know. Or if they did know, they didn't care. I mean, because that wasn't the point. The point was physicality. But look at what it's meant to do for the Indian community. Wow, what a goal. What a goal. The highest good for humans is awareness of the ultimate reality through their practices. And the number one practice? Meditation, yoga. Awareness of the ultimate reality is accomplished. And that's the highest good. So by becoming an expert of meditation, you're seeking that good. By becoming an expert of the practices that encourage that, you're seeking that good. So the spirituality of yoga, in its sort of umbrella form, is already starting to show here. It's meant to help accomplish these extraordinary goals that we can look at. And to find liberation from the cycles of rebirth. Well, what's that mean? We're going to talk about that a little bit, a whole lot. We can spend time on it. But the vision is the vision of a farmer, folks. The vision of the people of the book is really the vision of the priest, sort of linear stuff. The vision of Hinduism and the religions of India is the vision of a farmer. And how many have spent any time on a farm? I think I asked that question last week.
Little
Couple? Farm? Okay. So, how cyclical is a farm?
Oh, very.
Yeah.
Grandpa
grandfather in a dairy farm, so there was two milking cycles a day, every day.
Every day.
And if he screwed up the cycle, what was going to happen?
Well, the cows would stop giving as much milk, or bad things would happen. They'd just start leaking.
Yeah. And every day was really a learning process as well. That you learned how to do everything you could a little bit better. So tomorrow, your tomorrow was better, but you were still going to do it, but you're going to try and get. So I like to think of it as spherical as opposed to cyclical. Spherical is humanity's always trying to improve it, but it's still going around and living in the same cycle. But it's always seeking improvement. But the reality is that isn't an upward cycle. It's actually a downward cycle. And so what they hate in India are the cycle of rebirths. And what they're fleeing from with every conscious moment that they can work on it is the reality that life is horrible, life is tough, life is filled with suffering, and if I'm going to be reborn, it's highly likely I'm not coming back as good as I've got now. A crucial concept in religions of India. They are fleeing from the cycle. It is not a pleasant thought. It is a horrible thought that they're going to have to come back and do this all over again. Reincarnation is not a joy. Reincarnation is a horror in the religions of India.
Would
That
you
they are
say
going
that
to
for
do
all the religions?
everything,
Like,
all of them.
Like that's just their mindset? Is that reincarnation isn't like you don't work your way up, instead it's just like you're stuck in a cycle?
The rebirths, let me rephrase that. Rebirths they flee from. Reincarnation they strive for. So let's sort of try and figure out how we can break those two. You have got to create a pathway of positivity to get to enlightenment. So reincarnation is one of the greatest challenges in the religions of India. You can get to nirvana. Nirvana is that great goal, and it can only be achieved through the cycle of rebirths. We're going to come back to this a bunch of times, but it's going to be part of the linguistic struggle that we're going to have. Rebirths is a negative. Reincarnation, because you're assuming good karma and good futures, tends to be a positive cycle, because you have to go through a few good cycles before you're going to get to enlightenment, is the underlying statement. I'll work on that a little bit more, but just sort of catch. Most people are simply being reborn, and it's going to be in a worse state than what they're in. Okay? Some people are going to be reincarnated in a positive sphere, and that's going to give them their doorway to enlightenment or nirvana, depending on what tradition they're coming in. Okay, so, but it's part of the confusion of Hinduism. But just stay with me on this, okay? So the goal of the religions of India is to be liberated from the cycle of rebirths. Why? Because it's crappy, then crappier, then crappiest, then the crappiest still, and then it's if you're a Jain, you can be a stone. You can be reborn as a stone. Can you imagine if you were reborn as a stone, how tough it would be to break out of that one? So just know that that's sort of the thinking of India, okay? It's crappy now and crappier next time, okay? So just, so the point of the religions is to change that in a bunch of ways,
So
okay?
Just
Please.
to clarify, so you're saying rebirth and reincarnation are two different things?
Reincarnation tends to be used in a positive sphere within the religions of India. Okay, but I'm going to break that right now so that I can create some clarity here. Reincarnation and rebirths are very close. Okay, they're very close in the way that they're functioning. But the whole point of the religion is the negative downward cycle of rebirths. So if you think reincarnation is a positive, I'm going to use a different word, rebirth, so that I can convince you of the dominant, because if I don't prove this to you, I can't solve it with a religion. Because the religions are going to want to solve this problem. This is the problem they're all trying to solve. Is the cycle of rebirth sucks. We got to break out of this. Now, most Americans think of reincarnation as a positive. I'm getting better, I'm getting better, I'm getting better. Well, there's no point to the religion in if that's certainly not the religion of the video. That's not what they're trying to do. They're all trying to break the cycle of rebirth. Okay? So I have to give you sort of a new word, and I'm just breaking the two words just so that we have a conversation, because reincarnation has a positive tone to it within the way we typically use it. So I break it because I can't explain the problem and then the solution if I don't break it. Okay? So, everyone okay with me? Okay.
Is that why no one eats cows?
Oh, the other,
Why does no one eat cows, therefore a vegetarian? Let's just stay there.
I'm asking, is that why? Because your grandmother.
It's a logical extension.
or-
if you could incarnate from a human into a cow.
And which would be considered a negative down. I mean, you are a human,
But not necessarily, though.
but some of them are deified, yes.
I mean, not necessarily that a cow would be going downward from a human, because cows sit all day and meditate and eat grass.
Right.
What
Yeah.
happens? What's created from that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So is that why
Good
cows
life.
are holy in their, like,
Well, yeah, I would guess so. Yeah, I mean, because it could be some holy man in a cow's body there.
right?
That's right.
Hmm.
And so you were going to keep coming back to this because it's important. Why are they vegetarian? Well, what's an animal?
Right.
How was someone reborn? If you believe in the concept of reborn, then you will be coming back as another living being. Well, how are you coming back, and where is karma taking you?
Exactly.
And so you know, it might be a better one. It would be easier if we use dog now, because dog isn't as high a possibility in Hindu faith as cow. So cow is going to create some confusion. But if you just said I could come back as a cow, as a dog, well now, should I eat dog? Well no, because that might have been my grandmother and she wasn't a very nice person. You know, I mean, just the logic of that you are going to come back as a being. How will you come back? And if you've lived a crappy life, then people are going to sort of want to impose that on you. You know, you're going to come in as a rat. You're going to come in as a grasshopper. You're going to come in, you know, and there's that sense of that reliving, and where are you going to be reborn? And karma is going to come into the conversation. But I just want you to get a sense that there's the dominant assumption that there is rebirths, that the mind will come alive again in a new living creature, and in the vast majority of cases, it's in a worse setting than you're in now. Okay, so just get that as the problem we've got to solve with the religions. Okay, all of them. Okay? So it's hard. It's hard for us to work through that. We'll come back to it a bunch of times. Okay, so we talked about awareness and understanding. We talked about seeing what's around you, finding the commonalities, because that creates unity and bonding. We're seeing uniqueness, and I'd like to make this point. When you see uniqueness, that's your greatest moment of learning. For me, I can learn the most from a Muslim. I just don't know enough about that faith. I can learn the most from that person. That makes that person very important to me. You see what happens now? As opposed to, I think I'm going to go to war and we're going to shoot a bunch of Muslims. How do I not deal with my uniquenesses? They're not me, therefore I need to extinguish them. You see how uniquenesses can easily lead to warfare. Or uniquenesses can lead to an opportunity where I can learn. And so for me, I'd like to make sure you're aware of those opportunities of learning are from that which you know least about or that which is most different from you. And so that's why understanding is such an important second step. Value comes after understanding. I value that person because they're important to me. I can learn the most from them. And that needs respect, That means I have to know myself, and I have to refrain from first evaluation, which is what we're all taught to do. And I have to be willing to learn. And then I get to revalue my own religious journey. My kids are the ones that have forced me to reevaluate my own religious journey. They looked at my faith and said, Dad, it's crap. It's just crap. What you believe, it's wrong. Doesn't make any sense. Okay. It's time to reevaluate your faith, folks. and so, you know, when your kids do that to you, it's time to slow down and look at it. Why? Because I value and respect them. I appreciate who they are and what they're saying. And if they're going to criticize me, they're the experts. They're the ones that have lived it. And at the end of the day, I think they were right. So I had to really, really, really be careful. Because that's ancient, important traditions that we all need to reevaluate at times. And it usually comes from those close to you saying, why are you doing that? What is the point of that? That's a great time to reevaluate and not to necessarily change, but at least to revalue it. And that's the great gift that engaging in this can do. Okay. Religions of India. Let's take a break. Comments. I may have fire hosed you tonight. Are you okay, or is there anything you want to?
Question on the Hindu religion. How are you defining dualism? Because you're saying Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are dualistic, and Hindu's not. I'm a little confused on that. Because sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. Let's work. Let's work.
The yin and the yang symbol is a symbol of dualism.
It is.
I think it's often mistaken from Western. You're talking about the glasses. You put the Western glasses on, and that's what you see. You see, oh, well, there's good and evil. There's light and dark. But that's wrong. It doesn't come out of their religion. And religion isn't talking about good and evil. That's our glasses looking into that symbol. That symbol is like opposites. You could more say, you know, male or female, or these different aspects.
I was very careful not to say good and evil.
Right.
Within Chinese philosophy. Dualism. We've often pinned dualism in Christianity on Paul. Paul seemed to have a dualistic way of seeing his world. And so that's the Apostle Paul. But dualism is seeing the world as in contradistinction, often positive and negative. And so you start with body and soul. What's the soul? Not the body. What's the body? Not the soul. What's earth and heaven? So religions of the book have classically had an earth-based, and you can see this in St. Augustine clearest, in the city of God and the city of man. So he was clearly, in the way he saw his world, thinking about the cities that he was a part of and the heavenly realm. And so there's that focus on the heavenly realm as being totally distinct from the earthly realm. This is an ancient concept. Any God-based religion, Greek religion, the gods in the heavens, we're running around on earth. You get this sense of dualism to the way they see it. Within Hinduism, you have a much more unified desire to not see it in ways, a desire to look holistically.
But see, my thought is what Brett was saying, because my approach to dualism is that yin and yang symbol, where it doesn't incorporate good and bad or good and evil whatsoever. It's positive ions, negative ions, masculine energy, feminine energy, day, night, which all connect into one and create infinity, because basically when you have, how I explain it, like if you go to the West Coast, and on the West Coast there's an east side and a west side of the West Coast, And so when you go to the east side of the west coast, and you break it down, there's an east and there's a west, and you keep on breaking it down, and then that dualism creates infinity in a sense, and it's dualistic and it has nothing to do with good and bad.
Mhm.
But my confusion is from where you're saying the Christian Islamic and Judaism is dualistic and the Hindu isn't. So,
Well, it's, I had to change the words I used because of the problem you're now encountering. So dualism comes from the sense that I am a human being and there is a God in heaven,
yeah,
and that they're different,
yeah, and you're here and heaven is there.
is there,
Were you gonna say something?
okay?
So I had the same thought actually, like just looking at the slides right next to each other, and kind of I thought if it's dualistic, then they're separated. There's separation, you know, but with yin and yang, you have the drops in each. So you have the light and the dark and the dark and the light. So they're not completely separate. They're intertwined,
Yeah.
inseparable from each other, you know, I guess.
Yeah.
That's,
So there's Chinese dualism is very natural. Warm, cold. How do you define hot, cold? How do you define cold? It's not hot. How do you define hot? It's not cold. So there's a naturalistic dualism. So I'm going to just play with this.
Yeah.
Whereas then there's a theistic dualism, or I can't think of a better term. A theistic dualism is they're antagonists, and they're opposite, and you can't, and they're, so that's about the only way I can sort of separate between a naturalistic dualist like Chinese philosophy and a theistic dualism.
Well, you did
Like-
by saying one's linear and one's cyclical. It's
Isn't that the Taoist, the way is to be in that middle at all times.
Yes.
And there are the hot and the cold and the left and the right, and that's the way.
And the point is just to live in the space you're in.
Correct.
That's the point.
Right.
And we'll discover that with Taoism. But Christianity tried to, and Judaism and Islam have all created this is where you are, this is where you can be. And that contradistinction is not natural. It's supernatural, and that was the term we gave. We live the natural, the heavenly space is the supernatural, and that's not you. But you can get a pathway to that if you work it out. And so, boy, I haven't solved it, but I think we've come to some nice.
It's all about the eyeglasses, because we're always looking through these dualistic eyeglasses because it's part of our culture. But you look at a statue of Kali, and when a Western person looks at it, they think it's evil, and they stick it in a Raiders of the Ark movie and have some cult stuff going on around it. But just because it looks that way in their culture, it isn't necessarily evil. Kali is a female goddess, and she usually has her tongue out, and she has skulls on a necklace around her neck, and it's all very scary looking. But a woman is a symbol of birth and life, so also death. So it makes sense to have both life and death in the same figure. And then you see Shiva, who is also a god of death, but they don't fear Shiva. They worship and revere Shiva. There's Shivites out there. So it isn't necessarily that death is bad or evil, that there's one thing that's bad and one thing that's good. There's just, like you're always saying, there's all these cycles going on. And we're in the Kali Yuga or whatever, so I mean, we're in the age of Kali. So, there's a lot of darkness going on at this time, but you don't have to necessarily think of it as a bad thing. It's not part of their culture to think of it as a bad thing. You have karma, you have action and result. If you want a different result, you do different action. And these kind of actions are going to give you these kind of results versus these kind of actions are going to give you those kinds of results. So they're not always looking through these good, bad, kind of things. It's a different deal for sure.
We'll be getting you all up to speed on many of the names and terms that he just used. So that'll be part of our orientation, hopefully next week, as we go through the,
We use
various
the
ways of thinking.
opposites in a different way in my art class. And it's not just light and dark, but it's called something called complementary colors. Okay, red versus green, yellow versus violet, and blue and orange. Which one is evil? You know, there isn't an evil. They sit next to each other, and because they are opposites to each other, they create power. And power in the artwork. So if I put blue up against orange, I know that I'm going to have the most visual vibration. But if I mix blue with orange, and I mix it and mix it and mix it, to where there is no distinction between the blue and the orange, it turns into a mud color or a gray brown, and it's usually not, it's something that takes it down. So keeping the separate colors is how we keep the vibration. But as the closer they get to one another, the more vibrant they are. The more they're mixed, the less vibrant they are.
so Mark, that's where I'm going.
Well,
From dualism, I'm going to take you on a journey of the complementary nature of humanity. That's my definitional work. I'm going to use this language because dualism, as a result of feminist thought, they felt that the male-female distinctions in our society were putting women at a disadvantage and males at an advantage because of dualism. So they've been deconstructing dualism for 30 years. And so dualism has a very negative connotation in our academic orbits. So the point is, you better be careful with the term dualism. Even if it is positive within a Chinese philosophy, we don't live in China, so we don't have that orientation. We live in an Americanized where dualism is a negative concept, mainly coming out of that. So I moved to complementary, and that's where I'll go. Is I'll use complementary, which when you push me, you're just saying you're just using dualism in a different form. Yes, but it's a positive frame in our culture, whereas dualism has been beaten to death, theologically and within quality feminist thought. So if that makes no sense to you, my apologies,
No,
but
I mean,
it sort of answers the
'cause
question you were asking.
My definition with dualism has always been in the Chinese model.
Okay,
Of complementary.
right,
So that's where I was confused.
yes.
Thank you.
I'm going to quickly go over what I talked about a bit last week, mainly a little bit for Mark, but I thought with some new folks. And in the last few minutes, just to deal with some of the historical issues that are important, because when we look at the religions of India, we see four primary religions, but it's really thousands. We talked about that last week. India is a land of thousands of religions, and they've been aggregated. Hinduism is the English name for the religions of the country of India. The Brits gave them the name, and so it's important to know that it's not an ancient name. It's not a It's a name that makes no sense in lots of ways, which we're going to discover as soon as we get into the theory of Hinduism. You're going to see all these collisions, and you're going to go, what are these people doing? They're just all so different. We're going to see that quickly, and we're going to wonder what's going on. What I would like to say is a religion that's growing here is going to be different than a religion growing here by definition. And when they meet, they're going to be doing a boatload of things differently. But they're going to do some things similarly. And that similarity is what we're struggling for, and that's what we're going to define as Hinduism. What you will also want to see is that when it comes to Christianity, there's just few enclaves of Christianity. When it comes to Buddhism, it just almost doesn't exist. There's very, very little Buddhism within India. And the Sikhs are in the Punjab area in this particular zone. And there's, I think that's a little, Kashmir, can't quite get my thing there. the thing to recognize in this map is India is Hinduism and Hinduism is India. Got to be real clear on that. It's a political comment as much as a religious comment. When you leave India, you're leaving Hinduism. And it's almost that kind of political nature you have to sort of understand. And enjoy at a certain level. Okay. Another, we talked a bit about this, I'll be quick. India is a fertile spawning ground of world religions that we just proved. The Indus Valley is the start of most of the conversation around the Indian religions, the Indus River. That Indus Valley, then there was a migratory path of Aryans, we think from southern Russia, that migrated into this area and established their culture and became the dominant culture. And that conversation between the Indus Valley civilization of primarily farmers and the Aryan of herders gave us the conversation we're having tonight, because that's so much of the religions we're dealing with. Okay, and also a slide I showed you last week, the similarities. I'm just going to revisit quickly. Common perception of human existence. Life is in cycles, age after age. The real is unified. The sacred is not personal or historical. It's not an individual creator. There's an impersonality here and a transcendence. And the real essence of humans is not our life in a passing world. The question I would ask, and we have to discipline oneself to withdraw attachments to the passing world. So let me just to get the last question, which I want to bring. The real essence of humans is not our life in a passing world. What connects us, but what connects us with the sacred? You have to discipline oneself to withdraw attachments of the passing world. Okay? Now the question is, how does yoga enhance those qualities? So that's an essence of the religions of India. What's yoga doing? This. What is it doing? Make sure we understand that. It's doing what with the past? What's yoga doing with the passing world?
Slowing down.
Okay, slowing it down. Definitely, there's almost a time shift within you. And the meditative, and I'm also saying meditation when I do this. The meditative qualities that are woven together with yoga. So it's posture based as well as meditative based. So connect the spiritual, intellectual, and the posturing within yoga. So put meditation with yoga with this question. Our life is not the passing world. What's yoga going to do? Give you the capacity to ignore the passing world, right? If life isn't the busyness out there, then the design of yoga is to make me ignore it. Just not exist. We did that just for a beautiful little meditation there. The rest of the world doesn't exist the whole time we were in meditation. It just didn't exist. We ignored the passing world. Because whatever's out there, we don't want. So we've got to build a practice that allows us to ignore all that. Yoga's going to do that. It's going to connect us with the sacred. Where's the sacred? Where's the sacred?
Inside you.
It's inside of you. And so that's going to allow you to focus on where the sacred is. Okay? And discipline oneself to withdraw attachments to the passing world. So, and then there's a discipline here. Pretty obvious that it's discipline. Okay. We're out of time. I'm sort of going to quit right now. But I've got more, and I don't want to miss. So next week, we go at the pace we go at. And if you want me to slow down, I slow down. If you want me to speed up, I speed up. But all of this is important. So we're not going to miss anything. We're not going to miss anything. So if you bring your notes back, notes for next week, that would be appreciated. We're going to continue on it. If you would take a look and begin memorizing the Hindu terms, I think that's important for this week. Begin to understand that. If you begin to assess how you see the world, linear or cyclical, you've just begun the exposure of that now. How do you live? Do you live a linear existence or a cyclical existence? Again, we're dividing the two for the sake of just having a conversation. But begin to do that. Some of the activities I'd like for you to do. I'd like for you to watch a video on India. Okay? Watch a video on India. Anything. There's a new one out called Sacred Grounds, I think. I've just started it. It's from India. You'll be fascinated with what that is. So watch a video. Watch a video on
Life of Pi.
life. Oh, that was a lot.
Life of Pi.
That was an interesting one.
I like that one.
Yeah, Life of Pi. That's an
Life of Pi.
interesting
Have you
one.
watched that one?
Well, yeah, that's dualism from the perspective of the Hindu culture. I think
it's kind of
it's
weird.
interesting.
Any other tools that you recommend to each other of enjoyable investigation for this coming week? Any other tools you'd recommend? Again, books is what I enjoy. This is one of my more recent, The Mythology of the Aryan Nation. I couldn't show that to you before this moment. Otherwise, you'd be thinking Nazi Germany or Aryan Nation in northern Idaho. What am I saying is the mythology of the Aryan Nation now. These migrants that came down and put all their literature, and what you're going to discover is what you think is Greek and Hindu literature. It's really the Aryan Nation literature. The Bhagavad Gita is a wonderful one. If that's a nice short one. The Mahabharata. It's part of the Bhagavad Gita is part of this, and I started this and messed with it, and then I bought this. And again, world religion text. If you can find one at a used bookstore, they cost $1 on Amazon. I mean, this one would probably cost you $1. They're just dirt cheap because all the students pass them in. Do you have a world religion book that you would like? What'd you find? The Joy of Sects. Say it carefully.
I like that.
That's a great one.
Fun.
That's a good one. I love that one. But I'd get a world religion. I'd go through used bookstores or whatever, and I'd buy one. The other one my students always have to have is an anthology of world scripture. My preference is that you have all of the sacred literature in your libraries, but that's impossible. I mean, really, the library of Hinduism is bigger than this town kind of thing. So you like these anthologies because they just sort of throw some great stuff at you. So there's books. William James, one of the great books of religious experience, what we call seminal in the field, explains things for us in ways we may not have. Anyway, books that you might want to get.